You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the resistance. Thursday, October 18th. We're live right here for 3 hours. I'm Dean Obeidallah. On Twitter, at Dean Obeidallah, Facebook.com/Dean of Radio. If you want to check out the live stream of the monologue, it's also on YouTube at Dean of Radio on YouTube. My friends, 19 days. 19 days to the most important election of our lives. This is it. 19 days. We can change our country. Look, if you want a Congress that will not be a doormat for Donald Trump's corruption, one that will actually fight for your health care coverage as opposed to fighting to take away your coverage, you have an easy thing to do, and that's in 19 days. In fact, in many states, early voting already began. But 19 days for everyone. November 6th is our judgment day for all those things that have bothered us that we've talked about for 2 years. In 19 days, we got a chance to make a difference, to have our voice heard. So there's no sitting back. 19 days. So yesterday, Tina Dupuis hosted for us. I was not off. I didn't take a day off. We're not taking any days off between now and November 6th. I was all day at a conference on countering violent extremism and preventing violent extremism. I'm going to share something with you that I learned. It's a little off topic from the top news of the day, but then it intersects that, and it has to do with Donald Trump. It has to do with how Donald Trump, I'm not kidding, mirrors and parrots some of the extremist recruiters out there and what he's doing. And I'll share all that. But first, a little humor. Here's Trevor Noah last night on Donald Trump defending Saudi Arabia over the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Let's hear clip number 1, please.
The question that everyone is really after this week is, does Trump believe Saudi Arabia was behind the disappearance and likely murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi, right? And even as the evidence continues to pile up, Trump has seemed extremely reluctant to blame Saudi Arabia. Many people have suspected that it's because of money. And it turns out that Trump also suspects that it's because of money.
Aren't we just hurting our own country? So we want to be smart. I don't want to give up a $110 billion order or whatever it is. It's the largest order ever given by an outside country, okay? And I don't want to give that up.
You know, say what you want about Trump, but he wears his moral bankruptcy on his sleeve. Like, he's straight up like, look, I know Saudi Arabia killed the dude, but we all about the Benjamins, yo. Yeah, these long ties don't buy themselves, folks.
So, and that's very fair. And I know that Michelangelo was telling me many people were calling on his show and talking about the ties to Donald Trump's finances. And Saudi, we talked about it on Tuesday night with Rula Jibril, who was here, who's an expert on the Middle East. And then here was Trevor Noah on the unreal moment where Donald Trump literally invokes Brett Kavanaugh to try to get Republicans to rally around Saudi Arabia the way they rallied around Brett Kavanaugh. And there's really no words for this. This is something that in a movie would be deemed unbelievable. They'd like, you got to take this out. But here's clip number 2.
Not only has he said, despite evidence, that he believes Saudi Arabia's side of the story, he's also said that they are the real victims here.
And on the idea of trusting the Saudis, Trump said, quote, well, I think we have to find out what happened first. You know, here we go again with, you're guilty until proven innocent. I don't like that. We just went through that with Justice Kavanaugh, and he was innocent all the way.
Are you kidding me? Brett Kavanaugh? You're going to bring Brett Kavanaugh into this? Like, I like how Trump's way of dealing with an extremely sensitive issue is to bring in another extremely sensitive issue. He's like, here to discuss school shooting, special guest speaker, Bill Cosby, everybody. Bill Cosby. Ooh, the kids with the guns and the boom, boom, bing. I mean, poor Supreme Court Justice for life, Brett Kavanaugh. He just got finished with one giant controversy, and now you're going to drag him into another one? I mean, how do you feel about this, Brett?
I still like beer.
My man.
Still liking beer. Still liking beer. All right, so I know this might seem a little far afield on what's going on in the news, but I assure you, and I'm not doing a Rachel Maddow here, it connects more directly and actually gets to even things we're seeing now in the last 19 days of this campaign. And the reason I went to the conference, and I was part of it, I was the MC of the event on violent extremism, is that my world, it's not academic. I've 3 different ways it's been personal seeing violent extremism. And violent extremism ranges from ISIS and Al-Qaeda to white supremacist groups to any kind of right-wing or far left-wing actors that use violence. And this is all relevant to Donald Trump, and I want you to hear me out. I'd love to hear your view about this. First of all, how is my connection? Well, obviously, as a Muslim American, I've seen people in the news who've committed acts of violence in thinking they're doing the right thing. I've spoke to a mother whose son was recruited through the lies of ISIS online, and his son went all the way to Syria and was killed on the killing fields of Syria. The flip side is I've seen a backlash caused to my community by these violent extremists. I've seen a horrible spike in hate crimes against Muslims over the last 2 years. We've seen it with mosques defaced, shots fired at mosques, and some mosques burned down. We've seen women with hijabs be attacked. So in that way, I've seen it two sides. The third way I've seen extremism is with white supremacists. I've had to deal with them personally because I've written about them for the Daily Beast. One article I wrote was about last year before Charlottesville, calling on Donald Trump to denounce white supremacist terrorism and saying, you use the term radical Islamic terrorism all the time. Why will you not use the words white supremacist terrorism? Because you even said if you don't use the phrase, you can't defeat it, right? That ridiculousness. I wrote that in May, before Charlottesville. And the Daily Stormer and Andrew Englund, who runs the biggest neo-Nazi website in America, was so upset about me attacking their beloved Donald Trump that they fabricated tweets and said I was involved in the Manchester bombing that happened at an Ariana Grande concert last year, right around that time, that resulted in 22 people being killed. And tweeting things saying that I was involved, making it look like they were my tweets. Now, they couldn't post them online, but they could write an article about them and make it look real and telling their base to go confront me. And so I got death threats from these scumbags. And I'm suing them in federal court, and we're about to enter judgment by default. We have default against them. Also, I wrote about Gavin McInnes and the Proud Boys, the group that we just saw on the news the last few days here in New York City. I wrote about them last year. And all I did was quote Gavin McInnes's anti-Semitic comments, his anti-Muslim comments, and his vile anti-women comments. And Gavin got very upset that I dared to quote him. So he went on Twitter to his few 100,000 Twitter followers, said, let's get Dean fired. We got Reza Aslan fired at CNN. They didn't get Reza fired, but it doesn't matter. In their view, they did. And they tried to contact people here and at CNN to get me fired for calling out their bigotry and racism and sexism. Obviously, that wasn't going anywhere, but that's the people we're dealing with. Now, I went to this conference just to learn more about it. There was an amazing group of experts or ambassadors from Norway there, and Jordan, and academic experts and journalists like Graham Wood from The Atlantic and countless others. This is one personal takeaway I have, and they did not say the word Trump at all. But it was very eye-opening for me. And I'm not saying this to scare anyone. I'm just telling you what I heard and what I saw, and then connecting it to what I've heard and seen from Donald Trump. The way Donald Trump built his base is exactly the same language and themes that recruiters for white supremacist groups and Al-Qaeda and ISIS use. And hear me out. What I mean by that is that they're all about grievances. That's the first step. There's more to it, and it all matches up. That's what's scary. The first thing they do is grievances. There was a former white supremacist there who talked about his experience, and that his grievance was felt like he wasn't getting anywhere in society. People weren't treating him with respect, and he had dreams of greatness. Everyone has their own grievances. We've seen Donald Trump play on that victimhood mentality. So first, Donald Trump reaches out to a base of people, many who feel they've lost their way, that their life really hasn't worked out the way they wanted. And I have complete empathy and compassion for that. But Donald Trump made it seem like he was the remedy for their problems. Just like a white supremacist or an Al-Qaeda or ISIS recruiter will find someone who's lost their way, who's white or Muslim, and appeal to them, to their sense of self-worth, their sense of you deserve better, their sense of something is wrong, it's not your fault, it's someone else's fault, and their sense of appealing to them, saying you deserve to be involved in something bigger than yourself, something that gives you purpose, something that makes you great, like Make America Great. You could be part of that. And they did not mention Trump. As I listened to this playbook of recruiters who offer by the appeal to the sense of victimhood of people and the need to feel a part of something bigger, I realized that Trump is not an idiot. He's not a moron. I don't think he read white supremacist playbooks. He may have. I think he understands people. And Donald, there's one other thing these recruiters did. They played on identity. That's the big thing. So it's grievances they appeal to. Then they tell them, they offer them to be something, involved in something greater than themselves, something to make them feel like their life means something. And third, identity. In the case of ISIS, it's Muslims. In the case of white supremacists, it's your white faith, your whiteness, your race. What did Donald Trump do? He did both. He appealed to the whiteness of people and their religion, making Christianity the recruiting tool, and religion's a very powerful recruiting tool. So Donald Trump did that. And Donald Trump's devotion by his base transcends the GOP. And some of the GOP members don't get it. Why am I get primaried? I'm a real conservative. I disagree with Trump once and they come after me. I saw one of the Fox News guys, the business guy, saying, I said one thing about Trump and I got attacked by his followers because they're not getting this is not a Republican thing. Their allegiance, their loyalty is to Donald Trump. It is not the GOP. It is Trump's gang or Trump's clan. And that's what it is. It's tribal. And as opposed to the real Klan where you wear a white hood and you might go to a rally and cheer white power, at Trump rallies, you wear a red hat and you cheer things like lock her up together. And you're bonding these people. Is Trump understanding that? I think he is. He understands the power of uniting people by grievance, by promises of greatness, and by using their identity. This is exactly the 3 points used by ISIS and white supremacist recruiters. And I'm not exaggerating in any bit. This is something I've been learning before, but yesterday was a full day, like 12 hours of going through this. And some might say, well, Donald Trump never urges his supporters to commit acts of violence like an ISIS or an Al-Qaeda recruiter would, or a white supremacist would. Well, I'll just tell you, listen to this, clip number 3.
I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
Maybe he should have been roughed up because it was absolutely disgusting what he was doing.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
And the clips go on and on. You've heard them. I want you to play a little bit here. The passion in his supporters, it can't be understood politically anymore. I think it can only be understood by those who work in the field of extremism, because that's what we're dealing with here. And that's why Donald Trump, who was a Republican, and the Republicans are all about free trade. That's one of their big things, right? Well, Donald Trump went against free trade. And the GOP, who love him, didn't care anymore. Like, well, we don't care. Sure, we're for tariffs now. Anything he says, they're for. Because this is not about politics. This is beyond a cult of personality. This is extremism. And what happens is, and I've seen it, I'll give you an example today, something that happened online with me, with his base. And I've seen this before. When you attack Donald Trump, you're not attacking a politician to them. You're attacking someone who they feel personally connected to. You're actually, in their view, attacking their self-worth. You're attacking them. But you're attacking their self-worth because many of them, things have not worked out. And Donald Trump gave them a sense of dignity, a sense of feeling better about themselves, and a sense of self-worth. So when you attack Trump or say Trump's going to fail or not do well, you're not attacking the GOP leader. You're not even attacking the president. You're attacking them. And that's what makes it so remarkable. George Bush didn't have this. President Obama, they said cult of personality. He didn't have this. We've not seen this in modern day. Today, all I tweeted about, and it's actually good news, got a lot of bad news. Here's really good news from polling. If you listen to the show, you know I follow polls very, very closely every day. Go through them all. And all day I look at them and I read them as much as I can. Even local polls now, state polls. And it's not for specific polls from a day, folks. Don't ever be confused one way or the other. This one poll, oh my God, no. What polls are good for, if you watch them every day, you see trends. You see trends up, trends down. That gives you a sense of what the electorate is thinking. They're not always accurate, but those trends give you a much better sense than one poll in a vacuum. Well, since Kavanaugh, I have to be honest, the trends have been the GOP base has gotten more animated, more energized. That's true. It's not something I wanted to talk about on the show. And Trump's approval ratings were sliding up, especially in the Rasmussen poll, which is a right-leaning poll. And while it's not accurate, it's always been a good indicator to me about the GOP base. In fact, 2 days ago, he was up to 51% approval rating in the Rasmussen poll, only 47% disapproval. That was like 3 or 4 days ago. And the polls in various Senate states that are really important races had went from Democrats having a small lead to losing their lead. Well, little by little, over the last 4 or 5 days, that's begun to change again. And we started to go back to where we were 2 weeks ago before Kavanaugh. And the Rasmussen poll today, the same one that had Trump up at 51% and only down disapproval at 47%, is now flipped. 51% disapproval, 47% approval. That means not much, but more importantly, in the key Senate races, Democrats are now leading. And these are all in good polls. And they're just a snapshot. Don't take it to the bank. But the Democrats now, after being down, are up. And this is remarkable. In West Virginia, in Tennessee, up by a point now. Phil Brennan has been down by a while. Bill Nelson in Florida, up by 3. Indiana, Joe Donnelly, up by 10. West Virginia, Joe Manchin, way up. Nevada, Jackie Rosen, up. Kristen Sinema in Arizona, up too. All of these polls, and some Joe Manchin was always leading, but his gap had gotten smaller. Donnelly's gap had gotten smaller of leads. Have now turned into bigger leads. I simply tweeted about that. And his base went crazy. Now, I did tweet it against Donald Trump's tweets, which I like to do sometimes, but this was not taunting in tone. It was simply, here's what we're seeing. Because when I do that, I'm attacking them. It's not the GOP. It's not the senators in these states they've never been to. It's their self-worth. And, I wish I had an antidote. And it's not that I want to de-radicalize these people, because that's really a proper use of the term radicalization. Trump has radicalized them. Because we're 19 days from a midterm. And nothing in what I learned yesterday could help us, because there was a former white supremacist. He was a leader in the Midwest of the skinhead movement. He's now working to de-radicalize people. He said his antidote for radicalization was being exposed to those he had thought were horrible and were taught were horrible, blacks and Jews and gays. And he opened up a record store and he said these people of different diverse backgrounds came in. And at first he didn't even want to talk to them. Then they got to know them and liked them and started to question the ideology he was taught. Well, I don't think it's going to work with Trumpers, because there are demographic changes happening in this country. And if they're really fearful of it, it's real. And in their view, Christianity is under attack. The jobs thing, maybe if we appeal to some of them on the idea that it truly isn't your fault that your company moved out of the country, because it's not. It's the fault of big corporations and tax plans, and they make the most money they can, and that's what they do, and they'll go to Mexico or Taiwan or Indonesia, wherever they're going to go. And it's not your fault you lost your job. And we have to be there to help those people. And some percentage, yeah, maybe we can. But I'm not here to try to figure out de-radicalizing Trump supporters. We're 19 days from an election. And that's my focus, is us winning. And I would expect even more fever pitch as we get closer to Election Day from what I'm seeing now by the Trump supporters. Because it's not about Trump. It's not about the GOP. It really isn't about Trump. It's about them. It's about their self-worth. They are like someone who's been recruited to a white nationalist organization and attacking what they feel is their only reason for being now, because life hasn't worked out, which is Donald Trump. It's tribalism. But the tribalism really, that's why I keep getting at, it's about them. It's not about Trump anymore. You're attacking them by attacking Trump. You can see it. Like, you're a loser. I'm getting all the tweets. Oh my God, I got so many angry tweets today to the thing about poll numbers. They all took it personally. I don't know why. And I love to taunt Trump supporters, but I wasn't doing it this time. That's the truth. I really wasn't. Because if somehow the Republicans lose and Trump can't do what he wants, they lose. Because he is their self-worth. He is their self-dignity. And it's very odd. And it's the same exact thing I heard from the white supremacists, and you heard the same thing from ISIS and Al-Qaeda recruiters. So today, Donald Trump is lying about, literally tweeted just a short time before this show here. I'll read this tweet. It's a lie, but his base believes it because they want to believe it, because they have to believe it. He tweeted, all Republicans support people with pre-existing conditions. And if they don't, they will after I speak to them. I'm in total support. Also, Democrats will destroy your Medicare, and I will keep it healthy and well. Well, in reality, as we've covered on the show, right now as we speak in a federal court in Texas, Donald Trump's Department of Justice filed a brief trying to strike down the ACA, along with 20 Republican attorney generals, to try strike the ACA, which would end coverage for pre-existing conditions. I'm not being partisan. That's what's going on. And some go, well, the Republicans in the Congress will then, if that happens, they will enact a law to protect pre-existing conditions. Really? You think they will? You know they won't. Let's not play games. They won't. So Democrats created the ACA without any help from the GOP, as they gladly tell you. We're the ones that created pre-existing condition coverage, and they want to take it away. And yesterday, Mitch McConnell, folks, you don't need to exaggerate, said, if Republicans control Congress, he goes, if we had the votes to do it again, we will, because we're not satisfied with the way Obamacare is working. Mitch McConnell saying he will repeal the ACA. They don't care it's going to hurt their family or their friends. They just don't care. It's all about them. And for Medicare, no, Democrats created Medicare. We're not trying to destroy it. LBJ signed it into law. The GOP budget, I went through this before, in their House budget for 2019 that the GOP put in writing, they wanted to cut $537 billion from Medicare. And they want to change the program towards a system of private health insurance plans competing with each other like a voucher program. Democrats don't want to do that. This is in writing what the Republicans want to do. So Donald Trump can lie to them, just like a white nationalist, white supremacist leader, an ISIS leader can do to their base, because it's no longer about facts. It's not about the truth. It's about themselves. It is their self-worth. It was a very scary thing when I left there yesterday. And I'm not trying to get in their head. I'm not trying to de-radicalize them. I'm just trying to win this election in 19 days. And then maybe between then, when we get the House back, and maybe the Senate, because now a lot of states are back in play, and a blue wave, if the blue wave happens, my friends, and I think it's a blue wave, I think it's more of a purple wave. I think there's a lot of people, independents with us, countless women with us on all spectrum. So a pink-purple wave. Once it's over, though, once we win, between now and 2020, some of these Trump supporters, I think, will come over to us if we address the real economic stuff. But the others, I don't care. I'm not trying to turn a white supremacist into, to de-radicalize that. Because there's no way to do it, as I learned yesterday. Because the antidote to de-radicalizing white supremacists does not exist here. It does not exist, so don't waste our breath doing it. So I'd love to hear what you think. It's 3 weeks to closing the election. And Democrats are debating what's their closing argument from now to November 6th. What do you think it should be? What do you think Democrats should be hammering home? Is it health care? Is it a check on Donald Trump? Because some have said that. Do you think it's the idea we're going to defend ACA, we're going to defend coverage for pre-existing conditions, we're going to defend Medicare? Or is it about impeachment? What would you say is the closing argument that Democrats should make between now and Election Day? Or anything about what I've just talked about. And I know it was slightly convoluted. And we're going to have some experts from that panel on after November 6th, and they will make the point more academically. But I'm telling you, as I sat there yesterday, I finally understood the passion level of Trump supporters. It's not about politics. It's not even about Trump. It's about them. It's about who they are as a person. And they don't have much. And Trump has made them feel good about themselves. And if you take Trump away, it's their self-worth that's on the line. And what scares me is that Trump says commit acts of violence. I fear that some, not all, of course, some might do it. I hope I'm wrong. So 866-997-4748. Let's take a break. Come back. You're my guest right to the top of the hour. Give me some calls. Be right back. Look, it's time the media start calling out Trump's false statements for what they are. Lies. Trump's a liar. And by the looks of it, he's lying every day and twice on Sundays.
The Dean Obadala Show. You've heard Dean's thoughts.
Now it's your turn.
866-99-SIRIUS. 866-997-4748. This is the Dean Obadala Show.
On Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here, Thursday, October 18th. By the way, coming up in the third hour, we're going to be live, but then we have some pre-taped interviews. Two great people. Rory Kennedy, the daughter of the late Bobby Kennedy, on a great documentary she made for NASA that has so much about climate change, actually. And we're going to talk about climate change a lot. And then Riz Ahmed. If you don't know him, he's the first Muslim to win an Emmy Award. He starred in HBO's series In the Night Of. He's in Viper. Is it Viper? Yeah. And a lot of other movies. And he's a great actor and a really smart guy. So let's take some calls here. Here is John from Texas. How are you, John?
Hey, Dean, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Perfect, yeah.
Excellent. Our hearing is perfect. That was a good hearing test. I like that, John. It worked out well.
All right. Well, you said what should be the Democrats' closing argument for the midterms? And I absolutely 100% agree that it should be health care, especially from coming from Texas, who I'm going to be voting for Beto, by the way.
Yeah.
When I watched those debates with Beto and Ted Cruz, the one thing that Ted Cruz could not get anywhere near is health care. And they made Beto's argument so strong as to why we need a better healthcare system. And it's something that people can vote for because, I mean, it affects everyone, including Trump supporters. It's the one issue that we have them on the ropes on, and the one issue that we can go moving forward, regardless of what system we use. We need something that's better than what we have now, whether it be Medicaid for all or universal health care.
Right, Medicare for all, not Medicaid for all, but I know what you're saying. No, yeah, I agree, John.
Yeah, sorry,
no, it's okay. I'm just because Medicaid for all, it could still work. It's the same idea, but it's different. Medicare it's a much more popular plan. That's why we do it. No, but John, I agree. Look, Democrats are the ones who created Medicaid and Medicare and the ACA and coverage of pre-existing conditions. New polls show Americans overall feel that Democrats 18 percentage points more are better at handling health care than Republicans. That's almost a 20% gap, and that we are better at it. And it's because we're the ones that have a track record doing it. And they have a track record of trying to destroy Medicare, destroy Medicaid, and repeal the ACA, which they voted over 50 times to do, without any concern to covering pre-existing conditions. And they would have, if the late John McCain, did not give a thumbs down, they would have succeeded. And there was no backstop. We'll get to pre-existing conditions. It never would have been the same. The Republicans would never take a stand against corporations. They're not going to. Democrats stand up for people. They stand up for corporations. That's the difference. So, John, I agree with you. I think it's politically a good move, but I think the policy is what makes it such a good move. I'm so for it. We need to be treated like a first world country here. You should have health care provided.
And I think it's especially those Democrats running in the red states. It's an issue that they can run on. I mean, yeah, like for Heidi Heitkamp, like it's hard for her to talk to her constituents and a lot of these issues. But this is the one issue she can say that you know what, this is what we offering. What do they offer? They haven't offered jack. Pardon my French.
That's not even French.
Anything. All they want to do
like Jacques. Jacques would have been French. In any event, John, here's the other thing. This is why Donald Trump last week began attacking the Democrats on Medicare for all, and the Republican talking point was that they want socialized medicine. They went to all their old talking points because they really don't have a defense for it, and they're on the ropes, and they know that. And if they were actually smart, and they're not in this regard, they are on some issues, they would embrace it too and go, you know what? We want to do a responsible program for health care for all. And that's where we're going. We're going as a nation that way. Polls show that even a majority of Republicans want it. So its time is here. And for them to fight it all the way, it makes no mistake. Politically, if they were smart, they would embrace it and take the issue away from the Democrats. But they can't bring themselves to do it because they're owned by Big Pharma, they're owned by the AMA, and they're owned by the big health insurance companies who don't want this.
Exactly, and like I said, and I know not many people, everyone is probably listening to this show are probably progressives, but if there's any individual voters out there, you need to listen to the arguments and just listen to especially as someone who's dealing with healthcare right now. Personally, I'm lucky to have an health insurance through my employer, but not many people are lucky like that. A lot of my medication would cost me easily $500. and right now it just costs me $100. Thanks for that insurance. But there's some people that are not like me.
Right. And John, by the way, just so it's clear for everybody, the ACA affected even private insurance policies because there was no requirement that if you had a pre-existing medical condition, that if you switch jobs, let's say, John, and then you have a new health insurance policy, that you would have to have anything you were treated for before covered. They could say one of various things. And I used to be a lawyer and I represented health insurance companies that my firm did that I worked in. So if you had gotten sick and say you were treated for something that was a serious thing and you changed jobs, you went to a new job, they could cover it, but they didn't have any obligation. Instead, they could say, we're going to give you insurance, exclude that. Or second, raise your rates a lot. Or three, say, we're not going to insure you at all. You're simply not insurable. And you have to go to high risk pools, which were a charade of coverage with ridiculous high premiums and ridiculous deductibles, which they were just a facade, like a fairy tale of coverage. So people were screwed. And before the ACA, to remind everyone, if you got sick and your policy came up for renewal, the insurer could literally drop you because you had gotten sick or raise your rates because you got sick. They can't do that anymore under the ACA. So that affected everyone's policies. And tomorrow we're going to have Andy Slavidan, if all goes well. Andy ran the ACA and Medicare and Medicaid for President Obama the last few years. And we're going to go through a lot of that. We're going to go through what Medicare for All would really be. How can it sustain itself? And I hope Trumpers listen too, because Andy's not partisan. He's a policy expert. And we're going to go through how do you do this responsibly, because I want Medicare for All. It's not a political win, as a win for the people of this nation. Democrats and Republicans in the middle, whatever you are, we deserve it.
I agree. And in closing, I just want to say that I'm in the camp where, like, money is never an issue. Money should never be an issue. That's just where I sit as far as giving Medicaid giving healthcare to everyone. Money, I don't care the price tag. There's no price you cannot put on helping people, because I have a friend of mine who has to go on, thanks to the Ronald McDonald service, her child who really needs healthcare, who was born early, and she couldn't afford it. If it wasn't for them, the child would be dead. Literally. She's dependent, and I'm happy that the organization reached out to her and they're helping her. But her and her husband don't make anything that they would need to support them. And to me, there's no price on that.
I agree, John. It should not be an issue in this country, not in the greatest country in the world. We're told that, and it's time to treat our people the same way. All right, John, nice chatting with you, my friend. All right, let's take a quick break. Come right back. Take more of your calls. 866-997-4748 right here on the Dino Badala Show. November 6, 2018 isn't just Election Day. It is Judgment Day for progressives and our vision of this country.
Don't go anywhere.